So as I was reviewing some older videos to make some space on my phone, I saw the different mind states I was in, the different clothing. I saw when they purposely messed up my hair to make me look crazy. And it's very apparent to me what is going on as I reflect, and it's always good to reflect when we make this many videos, especially when they're gang stalking you and accusing you of being mentally unstable or having a mental illness. So one thing I see in common is definitely the nutrition plays a role in this. I would describe depression and bipolar disorder and obsessive compulsive disorder as states of mind where and also as it has to do with the circumstances of your life at the moment. And it's funny how they're going to describe these things as triggers, and there's some research into eating things such as greasy foods that make you have less of the symptoms. And it's very apparent to me that the nutrition is a major part here, as well as your state of mind, which is part of what you're seeing here. These are states of mind being expressed through your speech pattern and your behavior, the look you have to you as well. If you think about starvation and the effects it has, is that one of the effects it has, you go mad before you die of starvation. So what you're seeing is a degree of the effects of starvation, if you will, the degrees of the effects of extreme hunger, as well as emotional issues. If you're starving, you're less likely to take stressful situations in a positive way. And if you're suffering from a nutritional imbalance, the same thing is going to happen. So one thing you're seeing in my videos is you're seeing a very stressful situation, nutritional imbalance, and me doing a whole bunch of things at once. An impromptu speech where there's a time limit, time constraints, it causes this sort of behavior. And I think it's quite sad because there's a lot of people who behave similar to me. And they're going to say, well, look at this person who's quote-unquote manic. For the sake of argument, we'll even call it mania, which is something that I don't like to do, but we'll do it for the sake of argument. If you consider that this is describing a behavior rather than a chemical imbalance or a psychiatric illness, this is describing as a behavior that has a very simple, quick fix to it. That doesn't have to do with medication or psychiatric pills. I don't like to use the term medication when we're talking about psychiatric pills, and I don't like to use the term psychiatric terms because psychiatric illnesses as defined by them do not exist. They don't know what they're talking about. So yes, and also when people are in a nutritional imbalance, of course they're more likely to do something. When people are hungry, they're more likely to commit crimes. I mean, this is just common sense. So basically it's an imbalance of mind, body, and soul. Always my argument. It's always been true. It's very sad. You'll see them make the claims of speech patterns and of confusion and the way they think, their thinking pattern and their speech pattern, really, to put it simply. They have a lot of thoughts at once. Their mind is cluttered, if you will. And this is all the result of doing a whole lot at once and being hungry, or not even really being hungry, because sometimes your brain won't put it together as being hungry. You'll just be suffering the effects of a nutritional imbalance. You know, and if you look at it, you know, one thing I was eating dinner with my cousin. He talked about his mother and how when she eats wheat, she behaves differently. You know, and she's very irritable, and I'm sure you'll see a lot of the effects of eating wheat in her situation. In her case, is the same as the effects of different mental illnesses that they describe, which goes back to a nutritional imbalance. It goes back to what you eat. You know, the old saying, "You are what you eat." If you're eating a whole bunch of stuff that disrupts you, then you are disruptive. So the fillers, the GMOs, I mean, there's a long list of things, you know, that cause this to happen. The pesticides, you can view pesticides that make it to your foods as a drug that makes you behave a certain way. You know, there's a lot that goes into these things. There's no simple answer, you know. But to put it in a nutshell, it's the nutrition, it's what you consume, it's what you're going through, and if you have time constraints, as I do in my videos, and I'm irritated, and I'm getting it off my chest, that's when you're seeing it, you know. And also, you got to realize that the symptoms of mania are almost exactly the symptoms of anger, as I pointed out. You know, you get rapid speech, irritability, your thought patterns change, there's a level of confusion, especially when people are upset. They'll be like, you know, people commonly say, well, calm down and just tell me. You know, because their speech pattern is interrupted. Their mind is going a million miles an hour. You know, it's very basic what is going on here. It's the same thing with depressions, prolonged sadness. That's where it ends, and it directly relates to nutrition and what's going on in your life. You know, when something has to do with nutrition, what's going on in your life, it's insanity to drug that, because now you're adding another element of it. You're causing a neurological, cognitive, and chemical imbalance, and then you're going to turn around and say they have a chemical imbalance. Yeah, now they do. Thanks a lot, you greedy pharmaceutical scum, and you complicit mental health quote-unquote experts. So, you know, to me, it's quite sad, especially when I know that, you know, say you know, I had sex with a woman at that moment. Say I'm quote-unquote manic, and then I sleep with a beautiful lady. What's going to happen? Am I going to still be behaving that way afterwards? Of course not. So if it's a chemical imbalance, how come this exercise, this sexual activity changed it? You know, if I listen to classical music and I eat a very healthy, classy meal, then my behavior will change. Why is that? If this is a chemical imbalance, how come, you know, environmental factors are going to play a role in changing the behavior? Why not only the medication? You know, if you truly look at this and you break it down for what it is, and you consider the alternatives, and you consider everything that's coming into play here, their explanation is quite absurd. They've come up with a quite insane explanation for something that's very simple. What you consume, circumstances of your life. Now, if you want to talk about the brain being complex, yes, the brain is complex. But the ideas that go into it are quite simple. You know, what does the brain do? Well, it thinks. It's responsible for, you know, your actions, your moving. You know, it plays a role in regulating your heartbeat and what have you. Yes, there's a very complex explanation for it, but it's also very simple. So what they're doing is they're trying to make it more than it is. You know, well, it's extremely complex and only they understand, but they admit it, they don't. They can't explain it to a neuroscientist, a neurologist, a neurosurgeon. They can't explain it in those terms. They say, well, there's this theory and this drug, you know, according to studies, fixes it. What about having sex? What about alcohol? What about eating a healthy meal and listening to classical music? What about exercise? You know, let's do studies with that and see what happens. See what happens to a depressed person. And then they'll recommend that, hey, when you're upset, at the same time they're giving you drugs, they're taking you to therapy, and they're saying, hey, this is what you should do when you're upset. Because they realize that the drugs aren't fixing the problem. That's why in state hospitals, Napa State Hospital, there's all these assaults and murders and rapes on patients as well as staff. Because the drugs aren't making a difference, because they don't understand it, because they're not addressing the root cause. They're drugging it and increasing the medication. It's like increasing the dose of cocaine or something. Of course they'll be drugged up and they're going to behave differently. Does that cure it? Does that fix the problem? Does that make them functional? Pathetic. You know, so this video had to be made. I really didn't want to make it. I've beaten this, you know, topic like a dead horse, like you wouldn't believe, you know. It's a dead horse that's been beaten for years and years, literally. I've completely destroyed. This is the reason why I'm a target individual, the number one reason. More than my political views about secret societies. The secret societies are annoyed by that. But at the same time, you know, they would be tickled if I didn't go after them militarily, if I didn't go after them economically, politically, if I did socially, all these different aspects, you know, they would just be tickled. Like, oh, he knows what's going on and not too many people are listening to him. You know, they wouldn't really mind that much. But the fact that I'm going after their cash cow, psychiatry, mental health, big pharma, that disturbs them greatly. The fact that I'm going after their agenda in a very surgical manner, and I'm putting it in a way that even a fucking retard could understand and realize that I'm right and they're wrong, bothers them greatly. So yes, I'll say this. I'll go as far as to say this. Some of my behavior in some of my videos is similar to what they describe as mania and you know, a certain phase of bipolar disorder, if you will. There's no ups and downs. There's no quick mood changes. There is changes in speech pattern, which can easily be explained by nutrition and anger and time constraints. Even people on the news talk quicker when they have time constraints. They say, well, that's all for our show now. Look at interviews on the news. Are they not speaking quickly because there's a time constraint? Do people not have short attention spans? So if you want to make a point to them, you have to make it quickly. So, you know, when you truly break this down for what it is, it's the most harmful hoax in society, worse than the banking system, worse than anything, you know, worse than surveillance, is mental health. Psychology is the number one cause of death in adults, and psychiatry is the number one cause of preventable death in kids. Well, I'm talking preventable death in both categories. So, why have we let these killers convince families that they know what's going on? You know, would you listen to the devil? Would you listen to the most violent dictators in history about what you know, about your mental health? These are the biggest killers when it comes to preventable death. And most of these so-called unpreventable deaths are caused by the things that I'm talking about. Nutrition. You know, you could also look at it as, well, what about these food companies? What about fast food? And, you know, what about the chemicals in you know, home products, cleaning products, etc.? Yeah, they play a factor. Yeah, you know, you could argue that yes, they're causing deaths at a high rate as well. But the most readily identifiable cause of preventable death is psychiatry and psychology. And even if you're looking at it as the cleaning products are doing it, well, who convinces you to buy these things in the first place? Marketing. And what is marketing? It's psychology. It's a part of psychology, if you will. It's where psychologists apply their skills. So it's quite sad, really, that the main argument you're going to get, because they don't want to address my points, is this guy is a madman. He's manic. He's obsessive compulsive. He's depressed. He's psychotic. And of course, after the gang stalking claims, they're going to say, well, he's suffering persecutory delusions. He's schizophrenic. He's schizoaffective. That's what you're going to get. And I've thoroughly debunked all these ideas. I even have proof of them saying what they're doing. Gang stalkers saying they're trying to destroy my life in a text message, and saying that they want me to take all my videos down. They don't want to address my key points. They want to play me out as crazy. And I'm going to quote Tupac again. They're calling me a madman because I'm strong and bold. Something about the lies they told. What does this tell you, you know? they're a bunch of scum who can't address my key points. I rest my case.